Tonight, a 24-year-old U.S. Army soldier is accused of sharing bomb-making instructions over Facebook and talking about blowing up an unidentified major news network. According to two sources, the network he named was CNN. He also talked about killing members of the far-left group Antifa and destroying cell towers or a local news station, according to the affidavit. Prosecutors say Jarrett William Smith, while stationed at Fort Bliss in Texas and Fort Riley in Kansas, was discussing building bombs and conducting attacks. The FBI began tracking Smith on Facebook in March, but soon discovered Smith's conversations on social media discussing desires to fight and engage in violence dated all the way back to 2016, before Smith enlisted in the military. The feds say Smith sought out another man who had traveled to Ukraine to fight with the Right Sector, a violent right-wing paramilitary group. That man allegedly mentored Smith and prepared him to fight. The criminal complaint shows Smith stressed his desire to fight in Ukraine 1 year before he enlisted with the U.S. Army. Smith said, "No former military experience, but if I cannot find a slot in Ukraine by October, I'll be going into the Army. To fight is what I want to do."
This case shows a level of motivation that we don't always see in investigations, and that is someone who is so intent on causing harm and loss of life, he doesn't care where it's going to take place, either here domestically or internationally. This person was looking for a target to kill.
Smith joined the U.S. Army 1 year later in June 2017, but his plans to fight or blow up something only seemed to intensify. In a Facebook group chat in December 2018, Smith allegedly said, "I got knowledge of IEDs for days. We can make cell phone IEDs in the style of the Afghans." The FBI used a confidential source and an undercover employee to talk online with Smith in August and September of this year. Smith allegedly discussed targeting the headquarters of an undisclosed major American news network with a large vehicle bomb. An FBI bomb tech who analyzed his plan says the bomb would not have worked. Smith also elaborated on his plans to build weapons from everyday materials, saying, "Making AK-47s out of expensive parts is cool, but imagine if you were going to Walmart instead of a gun store to buy weapons." He allegedly gave very specific instructions for constructing an explosive device, which the FBI says would have been viable if correctly built. And he referenced presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke when asked by the undercover agent if he could think of any politician who would be a good target in Texas, according to prosecutors. Smith allegedly asked, "Outside of Beto?"
The FBI brought in bomb technicians who were apparently so concerned with his level of sophistication, they wanted to run to ground exactly what he was capable of doing, again, in order to stop a potential threat to the public.
And Beto O'Rourke says his campaign has been working with the FBI on this case. The U.S. Army also says it cooperated with the FBI leading up to Smith's arrest in Kansas this weekend. And that 24-year-old U.S. Army soldier faces up to 20 years for the charge that he distributed those bomb-making information online. Wolf?
All right, Jessica, thank you. Jessica Schneider reporting. Joining us now, Congressman John Garamendi, a Democrat. He serves on the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. So let me get your immediate reaction to what we just heard from Jessica, to her report. How concerned are you that this threat came from a soldier inside the U.S. military?
Very, very concerned. Obviously, he knows what he could do, and he's also corresponding with others. It is a very, very serious threat. Unfortunately, it is not the only threat. We had a problem with the U.S. Coast Guard just a couple of months back with a similar situation. We are living in the age of Trump. We're living in the age where these kinds of activities within the United States seem to be ever increasing without the president condemning it. So we've got a problem not only at the highest part of our government, but also in the ranks of the military. It has to be ferreted out. The command down through the ranks, all the way to the sergeant that's taking care of the platoon, has to be on top of these things. They have to understand what their troops are doing, and they have to call attention to any problem.
Well, let me just press you on that. You seem to be suggesting President Trump is responsible for what this U.S. Army soldier is accused of doing?
I am saying that Trump is responsible for not putting down the kind of violence that we have seen. We saw this in Charlottesville. We see this in many different places. We see this in his own rallies, where he is saying, beat that person up, and I'll back you up. I'll make sure that I'll pay for your legal costs. These are things that Trump has said repeatedly over the last 3 years. I'm not saying he's specifically responsible, but for creating an atmosphere in this country where this kind of activity seems to be approved where the kind of activity at his rallies, beating up reporters and others, seems to be approved by the president.